Hi everyone, I'm Derek Lieu here, and I'm gonna do a little breakdown of one of my trailers, which is the Quadrilateral Cowboy trailer. Now, this trailer I actually made in collaboration with a whole bunch of people. The person who had the overall idea for the trailer was Jake Rodkin from Campo Santo, and the writer was Chris Remo, also from Campo Santo, and the voice actress was Erin Yvette, who did an amazing job doing the reporter voice in this trailer. First, let's just walk through the trailer, and I'll talk about some of the decisions that I made and why shots are in what order and why I chose different shots. And then I'm going to go back into my project and just walk you through everything from the first sequence to the last one, roughly. Okay, let's dive in.
You probably think of your personal computer as a tool for work.
So the beginning here, it's made to look like a news report from maybe the 80s or the 90s, and we wanted to frame it in that way that happens so often on especially local news, where they're reporting on something that is actually pretty widespread, but they talk about it in this way that it's like, have you heard about this new thing called the internet? And here they're talking about hackers and just how they can hack into your system. And we have all this stock footage. And we mixed in a little bit of footage from the game development stream, I think. But this is all meant to just set up the world, because the game has this sort of futuristic but also retro aesthetic to it, because it has this like really chunky keyboard. But there are also devices in the game which just do not exist or could not exist. So it's really just to set the scene. And this was basically the whole premise that Jake had created for this trailer, I think at least a year before we worked on this. It was just this idea that was brewing in his head. Pretty much the whole concept of his goes through this section here.
And their next target could be the nation's capital or your very own living room.
Okay, so then this section here, all up with these credits, this was all done by Jake, and then he gave this to me and pretty much said, do the rest. But he had the concept done, and I had to do the gameplay. But I really like this intro. It's really nicely written because it sets up, like I said, the time period, but it also sets up the premise of hackers getting into your stuff, because that's the whole idea behind Quadrilateral Cowboy. It's about these hackers who are planning these heists using their kind of virtual reality setup.
It's a far cry from the days of file cabinets and phone books.
One thing that didn't exist until much later in the project was actually this voiceover. I was working through most of this project without this particular voiceover. So what I worked on a lot was just the images and the ideas in the game to kind of set up things in a sort of chronological order, almost like a video tutorial. But the thing that the voiceover let me do was match up visuals to the dialogue. So for example,
it's a far cry from the days of file cabinets and phone books.
You know, she mentions file cabinets and phone books, so I just show a book on screen at the time.
Computers make our lives more convenient, but experts warn that convenience comes at a steep price.
And so there's a lot of kind of back and forth between the narration and the visuals. So it's like, you know, this technology comes with a steep price, and then you have this idea here of this camera taking photos of this contract, and you have just, you know, these shots of computers just to set up this world of building your computer and kind of taking screws off this vent to sneak into this place, kind of getting past these lasers, which that's just a free cam going through. You can't actually do that in the game.
So, the next time you log on, consider just what information you're sending.
And so another thing that I did here was, so obviously all these sound effects are in sync with the tick-tock, tick-tock. And something that the game let me do was perfectly time things like these lasers being deactivated to the sound of the tick-tock, which actually the tick-tock was one of the things that Jake gave me that I went with. And a lot of the design of this trailer just came around having only that as the soundtrack, because I didn't have music to work with. I just took this TikTok and just went with it to just basically try to make one of those trailers which is very sound effects driven.
Consider just what information you're sending and who might be listening.
You know, and then this is just some more of the back and forth of the dialogue working with the footage. So she's saying, you know, who might be listening? So then I show in the shot, you know, these are two of the characters from the game, you know, these people might be listening, just to kind of match everything. So then it all goes together nicely.
Who might be listening? Because these high-tech hackers are playing high-stakes games, and their only loyalty is to the highest bidder.
You know, and then just the idea behind some of these sequences, like these shots here are meant to just kind of show some of the epic scope. And then these parts here, which these probably go by too fast for the audience to understand what's happening, but in terms of the sequence, this is you using the Weaver and then just showing it being used. And then I just wanted to show some other sequences like, you know, use this thing to open the door, which technically it doesn't open this vault, but I just wanted to show a little bit like before and after of you hit some switches and then something will happen, and just kind of do that over and over again, and just walk through a lot of the different settings and just show kind of an escalation of how intense these missions get. So at first you're just opening doors and unlocking safes, and then here they're actually kind of catapulting onto moving trucks and sawing things open. And then there's this gun suitcase here, and then they're prying doors open, which goes along with the voiceover here.
To your bank's local branch, one thing is clear. Nowhere is beyond their reach.
So nowhere is beyond their reach, so show them opening the door. And then this ending, I believe the sound design and the music, this is all Jake, and then I just decided to make add the visuals here. So the idea is at the very beginning of this trailer, it's all about sort of diving in, and then at the end, it's about coming out. Because that is actually basically part of the game loop, because in the game, you're not actually going on the heist. You're just going into your virtual reality set, playing the heist, and then once you figure out how to do it properly, then you're done, and then it's mission complete. And then presumably either they or the clients that they're working for go and actually do the heist. So it's just a little bookend here to say, like, dive into virtual reality, and then at the end we come back out. And then we have this nice, I think it's Claire de Lune music. And then Jake did all the sound effects and the graphics for this whole section. He had this really cool CRT distortion there, which I really like. And so more broadly, the ideas behind a lot of these shots was just to have one single thing that happens in each shot, and then have a sound effect that is associated with it. The only ones that where this doesn't occur are these building shots, which these are just meant to be kind of epic in scope and just give you this big world view. But everything else is some sort of really punchy action. Just everything has happened. There's something happening in every single one of these shots. And then as soon as that purpose has been fulfilled, then I just move on, which I kind of had to do it by necessity, because if I wanted to keep having things in sync with the TikTok, I just had to move on to something new every single time. All right, so let's just walk a little bit through my select reels for this trailer. So this first section here are just all the cinematic scenes, which look really cool because it's them riding hover bikes around the train. I just had to collect all these different scenes into one spot. And then this next section here is just all me opening doors in the game, because this is one of the simpler ideas that I knew that I would want to put in the early part of the trailer. And then this next section here is just more hatches and things opening. Pretty much anytime I was looking for shots for this trailer, I was just looking for just things changing on screen in some sort of way. And things like a door opening are just a very clear example of something like that. And then this section here, this is all about the different payloads in the game. So the goals that you're striving for to hack into. So this one here is just hacking into this old person's memory. But other cases, it could just be like things from a vault or things like other things like that. And then this here, this is just a small section of looking at yourself in mirrors, because I thought it would be kind of cool to show, but it's only really made it in one time. And then this section here, these are all different shots of your different teammates. One is kind of the muscle, and then the other one is fixing things like this door opener, because I just wanted to show some of the other characters in the trailer too. And then this here, this is all about sort of infiltrating and getting into different spots of the game. For example, all these scenes here where you're taking screws off of the vents, and then hitting these buttons, and just showing another example of, hey, there's going to be sneaking in this game. And then this here, this is just a small section from the beginning of the game when you're putting together your PC. You're like putting the CD drive in, you're putting the memory in, you're putting the hard drive. This is just a small part, but it's just, since it works visually, it's really easy to understand. I just wanted to highlight each of these sections. This is a really good game in terms of just having things happening on screen that you can understand at a glance, which, lucky me. And then this section here, this is all about your little virtual reality device where you're just diving in and then showing the close-ups and all these moments where you're kind of diving into the world because it has this cool camera effect. Then I have a big section here, which this is all just different environments in the game, just to show the variety of different places that you're going to infiltrate, and they have a really cool architecture in all of these levels. And then this section here, this is all about just the different interiors, and just trying to make them look as cool as possible with some good camera angles to just show off things in their best light. And there's just a whole lot of stuff in here, like, you know, kind of rotating around them or going into ducts or just looking at some of the set dressing. And then this here, this section is just a lot of examples of like the computer monitors in the game, which I showed every now and then in the trailer. And then this section here, this is all just inserting these discs into this drive, which you do at the beginning of each heist. And then over here, we have some examples of some of the different vehicles. One thing that I'm always looking for to put in a trailer is just movement of any sort of type. And of course, a vehicle is a good example of something that will be moving because by its very nature. So wanted to show as much of this as possible, and some of these are just really, really cool looking shots. You know, the art is very, very stylized, but they still look really amazing and pretty epic. And then there's just a small section with this Weaver robot. And then this is a lot of fun. This is the weapons and the guns. Of course, if you have any sort of weapons in the game, then you want to show those off. And this is the suitcase gun, which can open up and position itself and then fire bullets and activate doors and that sort of thing. And then this here, this is this cool door opening device that you can use, just pry doors open, which we only showed once, but I just used it in all the different scenarios where it was possible, and then eventually settled on the places where it was best. And then this one here is also same sort of idea, but this saw opening up different grates. This section here, there's this effect of sort of fast forwarding through parts of the game that, you know, just the visual was really unique. I don't think I actually used any of this in the trailer, but I wasn't sure at the time whether or not I was going to use it or not. I just thought it looked cool, so I thought I'd collect it. And then this last section here I just called stunts because it was just a lot of the parts of the game where they're like catapulting onto vans or other buildings. And even though there's not a lot of animation, a lot of times, especially the first person perspective, looked really, really cool to have this sort of thing, because there's no fall damage in the game is one thing. So you get these really amazing, epic looking shots. Okay, so now let's look at some of the early sequences. At the very beginning here, I had a different voiceover, which wasn't as focused, but let's take a look.
Imagine, if you will, sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem. In fact, both local San Francisco papers are investing a lot of money to try and get a service like that started. 17 stories up in his fashionable North Beach apartment, Richard Halloran is calling a local number that will connect him with a computer in Columbus, Ohio.
So, I don't remember what the idea behind the script was, but you can tell it's not really as on point as the one that we finished. It doesn't really as directly reference hacking and all of that stuff. So this was just a way to get started and start playing with ideas. And there's a lot of shots here you see that we didn't end up using. But we were just kind of feeling out the intro. And as you can see here, this is the intro that Jake gave me. And then I was just experimenting just a little bit here. So here I was just experimenting with just adding sound effects to go along with the tick-tock, tick-tock. And then for the next sequence, I just experimented with that a little bit more. I just wanted to see what it would sound like. Yeah, so that's just me playing around. And then over here is where I just start putting in more and more stuff to see how this sounds when I just add a variety of different sound effects. And you'll see, like, by itself, it's pretty cool, but it's kind of empty. So that's why later on we decided to add the voiceover on top of this, so then that it just feels more cohesive. Because just by itself, it's kind of cool, but it's kind of not really interesting enough on its own. You can see it's adding different ideas. And some of these made into the final cut, some of them did not. Here I was adding the book. Start adding the lasers there. And experimenting. And also this was a very quick turnover for this trailer. I think I did this whole thing in 5 days. And a lot of this stuff is just temporary capture. Some of this made into the final cut, but others are maybe not quite in sync the right way, or the composition's not quite right, so I had to go back and recapture them. But this entire section is actually a lot longer in these early cuts, because I didn't have anything stopping me from putting anything in, because I didn't have like a voiceover that was a finite length, which would have made me stop at a certain point. So there's all these sections that I just kept on going. And here I'm trying out this sort of thing with a modem to use like as a rise to finish off the trailer. And then so what happened when I got the final voiceover was the end section was a lot shorter, so what I had to do was just go through a lot of my old sequences and just take out the most interesting shots from every single one. So there are a lot of shots which got cut because maybe they were kind of redundant, and I just took things that were really, really interesting, like these stunts and the swords, of course. You gotta show swords if you have them. This gun. And then Jake figured out this ending here, which was a really nice way to finish things off.
Nowhere is beyond their reach.
Yeah, and then just the other thing that I tried to do through this entire thing was just try to keep things as centered as possible. which I usually try to do that anyway, but just keep them as centered as possible because I knew these were going to be really fast cuts and I didn't want the audience's eyes to have to adjust pretty much at all. So everything is just very, very centered. And I think the voiceover does a really good job of just cluing you into the ideas about hacking, because this trailer doesn't really teach you exactly how the game is played, it just shows you a lot of it, and we just kind of hoped that you would find it interesting enough that you would want to get the game and not really worry too much about the nitty-gritty. So this one was a little bit more style over substance, but I don't know, I feel like it was like enough style that it made up for it. If someone was really, really curious about it, they could just go in shot by shot and try to figure it out. I think that if you do just look at it shot by shot, you can figure out the gameplay, but it might be a little bit much just going through all in one go. But I think as long as you got the idea that it's hacking and heists and, you know, all these terminals and keyboards and the satisfying sound effects, I think that's a pretty good hook. So I don't feel that this probably could have been significantly better if we tried to worry a lot more about how clear the gameplay is. Alright, so that's my breakdown of the Quadrilateral Cowboy trailer. If you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend it. Obviously, I'm biased. But I did actually play the whole game before working on the trailer, which says something because I had a very, very little time to make it, relatively speaking. But if you liked this format, let me know in the comments. If you have other trailers that I've made that you're curious to see me break down in this fashion, let me know. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. And other than that, like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell, and have fun. All right, thanks.